In the quiet depths of ancient time before the flood swept across the world, there was a mystery whispered only in fragments across sacred texts. What happens when the holy ones of heaven turn their gaze upon the daughters of men? This is no common tale, but one that presses at the fragile boundary between heaven and earth, purity and corruption, desire and destruction. It is the forbidden story of when the Watcher's angels, appointed to guard mankind, lost themselves in longing. Imagine the ancient world vast and unspoiled, where humanity grew and multiplied. The children of Adam built villages, tilled the soil, and raised families under the open skies. Fires lit the darkness of night, and laughter of daughters filled the air. And unseen high above beings of another realm, bright, powerful, eternal, looked down with eyes that were not meant to linger. The Book of Genesis gives but a brief, solemn phrase. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were fair, and they took them wives of all whom they chose. But that simple line conceals a great tragedy, one that other ancient writings dare to unfold in fuller measure. Among the angels, there was a company known as the Watchers. Their task was to observe, to guide, to protect. Yet what begins as vigilance becomes temptation, and what is temptation but the spark of rebellion? Legends tell of a leader named Semjaza, whose voice carried both command and hesitation. He saw the beauty of human women and confessed his desire, but he feared the consequence. For was it not written in the eternal order that angels were not to cross into the bonds of flesh? Yet his hesitation was not enough. For there was another bolder, Azazel, fierce in will and cunning in persuasion. He pressed the matter, urging the others to swear an oath. Together, they bound themselves in rebellion, sealing their fate with an unbreakable vow. So, under the cover of night, the Watchers descended. Their brilliance, once radiant with heaven's purity, now burned with a fire of forbidden passion. They walked among men, not as messengers, but as seekers of pleasure. And the daughters of men, seeing their stature and glory, were enticed. Thus began unions never meant to be the mingling of mortal and immortal, the marriage of clay and flame. From these unions, new beings arose, mighty, towering, and unnatural. The ancients called them the Nephilim, giants of renowned warriors, of immense strength, whose very presence consumed the earth. Their appetites knew no bounds. They devoured not only the fruits of the field, but also the flesh of beasts, and at last the blood of men. What had begun with desire now rippled into violence, until the earth groaned beneath the weight of corruption. But it was not only flesh that was corrupted, for the Watchers brought with them knowledge never meant for humanity. Azazel taught men the forging of weapons, and women the use of adornments and charms, painting faces with colors to seduce and deceive. Others taught enchantments, astrology, the movements of stars, the cutting of roots, and the whispering of forbidden secrets. Wisdom twisted into sorcery, beauty warped into vanity, strength transformed into oppression, and in the heavens, sorrow grew. The cries of the innocent rose like smoke before the throne of God. Bloodshed stained the ground, and the balance of creation trembled. The angels who remained faithful, those who had not fallen, looked upon the earth with grief and dread, for they knew the day of reckoning was near. Here lies the mystery. Why would beings created in holiness, dwelling in the radiance of the Most High, risk everything for mortal love? Was it pride that blinded them, or longing that consumed them? Did they envy mankind, who though frail carried the image of God in flesh and blood? Or was it the daughters themselves, radiant in their humanity, whose laughter pierced the hearts of angels. Whatever the reason, their choice was made, and it could not be undone. For once, heaven's sons took root upon the earth. Neither angel nor man would ever be the same. The Watchers had abandoned their station, and in so doing, they tore a rift in the order of creation. A line had been crossed, one that heaven itself would soon confront with judgment. Yet even in this, there is meaning for us. The tale is not merely of angels and giants, but of desire unguarded of boundaries, crossed of the high, brought low by the lure of the forbidden. It speaks of the frailty of even the mighty when temptation is welcomed, and of the cost when desire rules over obedience. For humanity, this story whispers a warning that beauty, though radiant, can also be perilous, and that knowledge, though powerful, can destroy when taken without wisdom. It reveals that corruption does not begin with war, but with a single gaze, a single longing left unchecked. The stage is set. Heaven watches. The earth trembles. The daughters of men smile unaware of the doom their beauty has awakened. And the Watchers, those once guardians of mankind, step boldly into the shadows of rebellion. This is the first fall, the forbidden union, the spark that will ignite judgment. The angels desired, and in their desire, the fate of the world began to change. The first whispers of rebellion had passed into action, and now the earth bore the consequences of heaven's betrayal. The Watchers, who once stood as guardians, became corrupters. Their children, the Nephilim, walked the land as giants of terror, beings neither angel nor man, yet stronger than both. They spread across valleys and mountains, consuming all they touched. Villages trembled, crops failed under their insatiable hunger, and men cried out as their sons and daughters vanished into the shadows of these monstrous offspring. The Nephilim were not only tall in stature, but great in cruelty. Their voices roared like thunder, their weapons crushed like iron, and their appetites knew no bounds. The ground ran red with blood, and the cries of the innocent pierced the sky. Where once there was laughter, there was now wailing. Where once the land blossomed with life, it now withered under violence. But the corruption was not only physical. For the Watchers taught mankind things not meant for their eyes. Azazel gave men the secrets of forging swords, knives, and shields. And so war was born not for defense alone, but for conquest. He taught women the use of mirrors and precious stones, twisting beauty into seduction and power into manipulation. He unveiled metals of the earth, fashioning weapons of death and ornaments of pride. Another, named Kokabiel, revealed the signs of the stars, teaching astrology to mankind, an attempt to grasp destiny without trust in God. Armoros gave knowledge of enchantments and curses, while Barakiel showed the movements of clouds and omens. Penemu whispered the secrets of writing, but not for wisdom. Instead, it was twisted into spells and bindings. And Kasdeja taught the ways of abortion, the spilling of unborn life before it could draw breath. What had been gifts of knowledge when kept in heaven now became tools of destruction in the hands of men. It was a corruption deeper than flesh. It was the poisoning of the heart. Humanity, once simple and close to creation, now reached for powers they did not understand. The Watchers delighted in their teaching, but heaven wept. And so, the earth became unrecognizable. The giants roamed free, filling the land with fear. Men armed with weapons they had never known before struck down their brothers in anger and greed. Women adorned themselves in strange colors and charms, enslaving men with their eyes. Blood magic and vanity spread like fire. The natural order trembled beneath the weight of this rebellion. The faithful angels, still watching, lifted their lament before the Most High. They cried out, "Behold, the blood of the innocent cries to heaven. Behold, the earth is filled with violence and corruption." Their voices, filled with grief, rose like incense to God. And in his throne of glory, the Creator who sees all was moved to judgment. But before judgment, there was sorrow. For God had formed the earth in beauty, a garden of harmony, and mankind as his image-bearer. Yet now, that image was marred, twisted by angelic rebellion and human sin. Scripture tells that God looked upon the world and his heart was grieved. The grief of God is not weakness, but a holy sorrow. Like a father mourning children who turn from his love, still justice must come. The Most High summoned his archangels, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel. To Michael was given the command to bind the leaders of the Watchers. To Raphael was appointed the task of healing the earth from the corruption of Azazel's teachings. To Gabriel was entrusted the command to strike down the giants, stirring them to destroy one another until they were no more. And to Uriel was given the solemn duty of warning Noah, the man chosen to carry life through the storm to come. The Watchers, who once strode boldly upon the earth, now trembled. For though they had taken wives and begotten sons, though they had taught mankind their secrets, they could not escape the eye of God. Their power was vast, but heaven's decree was greater. They begged Enoch, the scribe of righteousness, to intercede for them. They pleaded for mercy, sending him with their petitions before God's throne. Enoch the faithful walked among angels and men carrying the words of the fallen. He ascended in visions, standing before the glory of the Most High, and delivered their plea. But the answer was firm. There would be no pardon. The Watchers had abandoned their place, crossed the boundary set by God, and the judgment was sealed. Their petition was denied. It is here that the story deepens. For though the giants would soon perish, and though the Watchers would be bound in chains of darkness, the scars of their rebellion remained. Mankind had tasted forbidden knowledge, and once tasted, it could not be forgotten. The art of war, the weaving of spells, the gaze upon stars for omens, these spread across generations, echoing the corruption long after the Watchers fell. What lessons lie here for us? That every gift of knowledge carries weight, and wisdom without reverence can be deadly. That beauty without holiness becomes vanity, and strength without justice becomes tyranny. The corruption of creation was not merely the making of giants, but the poisoning of the human heart with pride, violence, and lust for power. The consequence of this corruption was inevitable. The balance of creation could not endure such defilement. Judgment drew near not only upon the Watchers and their offspring, but upon the earth itself. Yet even as storm clouds gathered, a single family found favor in the eyes of God. For in Noah, righteousness remained, and through him, humanity would find a narrow path of deliverance. The angels had desired the daughters of men, and from that desire sprang violence knowledge, twisted and corruption that reached to heaven's gates. Now, the decree of judgment thundered forth, and the first drops of a flood of reckoning began to fall in the whispers of prophecy. The voices of heaven had spoken, and the decree was fixed. The Watchers would be judged, their offspring destroyed, and the world itself washed clean. The rebellion of angels had shaken creation, but the justice of God would restore it. It began with the giants. Once fierce and unchallenged, they now turned upon one another. The command of Gabriel stirred discord in their ranks, and the mighty Nephilim, who had ruled with terror, now clashed in brutal war. Their roars shook the mountains, their blood ran into rivers, and their corpses darkened the earth. What had been born in lust ended in violence, and the earth groaned under their fall. The watchers watched in horror as their children perished. Their pride, once exalted, collapsed into despair. These beings had believed themselves untouchable offspring of heaven and earth, destined to rule forever. Yet the hand of God had reached them through their own sword. The very strength that had defied heaven became the weight that dragged them into destruction, and the watchers themselves, for them, was a darker fate. Michael, the warrior of God, descended with power. His command was firm, his judgment certain. He bound the leaders of the rebellion, Semjaza Azazel, and the others in chains of unbreakable light. They were cast into the abyss, a place of shadow and fire, a prison beneath the mountains of the earth. There they would await the final judgment, their once brilliant forms dimmed by the stain of rebellion. Azazel, the corrupter, received the harshest sentence. He was bound, hand and foot, cast into the desert of Dudael, and covered with jagged stones. Over him was darkness sealed until the day of the great fire. The knowledge he had poured into mankind of weapons, war, and seduction was marked as the cause of humanity's suffering, and the earth itself would cry against him. But judgment was not for the watchers alone. The earth itself, corrupted by blood and violence, would face cleansing. And so, the Most High spoke to Noah, the righteous man. The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. For behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. Noah obeyed. In the face of mockery, he built the ark, plank by plank, beam by beam, while the world carried on in its corruption. His hands were steady, for his heart was fixed on God. And as he labored, the clouds gathered, and the fountains of the deep prepared to break forth. When the day came, the rain began to fall heavy and unrelenting. The windows of heaven opened, the earth split with fountains of water, and the flood surged across valleys and mountains. The giants, if any remained, were swept away. Men and women, who had learned vanity, war, and sorcery from the watchers, cried out in terror. But the waters showed no mercy. The flood swallowed the corruption of the world, leaving only silence. Inside the ark, Noah, his family, and the creatures of every kind were preserved. They heard the cries of the drowning, felt the ark lift upon the waters, and trembled at the hand of God. Yet within that vessel of wood there was hope. For though judgment had come, deliverance was given. The ark became a sign that even in wrath, God remembers mercy. When at last the waters receded, and the ark came to rest upon the mountains, a new covenant was spoken. God set the rainbow in the clouds as a promise that never again would a flood destroy all flesh. It was both a reminder and a prophecy that though judgment comes for sin, redemption is always near for those who walk with God. The story of the Watchers, their desire and their fall, is more than ancient history. It is a mirror for humanity. For desire unchecked still corrupts. Knowledge misused still destroys. Violence still fills the earth, and vanity still blinds the heart. The rebellion of the angels is an echo of every rebellion, since when creation turns from the Creator, chaos follows. Yet, within this darkness, hope shines. Noah found grace. The faithful angels remained steadfast. The covenant was renewed. And even the binding of the watchers pointed forward to a greater victory, the day when all rebellion, earthly and heavenly, will be judged, and the kingdom of God will be restored in full. This tale, solemn and strange, leaves us with lessons etched in eternity. To guard desire with obedience, to wield knowledge with humility, to resist the temptation of power that corrupts, and above all, to remember that no darkness, however deep, can overcome the mercy of God. The angels desired the daughters of men, and in their desire, the world was broken. Yet from that brokenness, God brought renewal, pointing always toward the promise of redemption. What was corrupted was cleansed. What was judged was also offered hope, and what was forbidden became the stage upon which the justice and mercy of God was revealed. And now, as the story draws to its close, let the pace soften and the images blur like mist at dawn. The rebellion has been told, the giants have fallen, the flood has passed. The earth once torn by violence now rests in quiet renewal. The ark sits upon the mountains, surrounded by the hush of a world reborn. But let us linger, not in the thunder of judgment, but in the gentle whisper that follows. For every tale of ruin must also hold a thread of hope, and every shadow is balanced by a light beyond it. The Watchers remind us of a truth that echoes in every age, that no being, however mighty, is beyond temptation. Even the radiant sons of heaven charged with guardianship faltered when desire overcame obedience. Their fall is both mystery and warning, showing that pride and longing can twist even the purest heart. And the Nephilim, the giants of renown, serve as a reminder that strength without holiness is ruin. Their power consumed the earth, but their end came swiftly turned against themselves by divine decree. They rose like mountains and fell like dust. Their legacy is not of greatness, but of corruption, a story written in sorrow. Yet above their fall shines the faith of one man, Noah. Amid the corruption of his generation, he walked with God. While others gave themselves to violence and vanity, he listened, obeyed, and endured. His ark became not only a vessel of wood, but a vessel of promise, carrying life through death, hope through despair. The flood itself, though terrible, carried a hidden kindness, for it cleansed it, renewed it, offered the world a chance to begin again. And the rainbow that followed stands as a gentle covenant painted across the sky, reminding all creation that mercy lingers even after wrath. So what do we take from these mysteries? That desire must be tempered by faith lest it consume us. That knowledge must be held with humility lest it corrupt. That power must bow to love lest it destroy. These lessons are not ancient relics, but living truths, pressing upon us even now. For though the Watchers are bound, the temptation they represent remains. Every heart wrestles with longing. Every life stands at the threshold of choice. And still, the same voice calls, walk with God as Noah did. Trust, obey, endure. As you close your eyes, imagine the hush after the floodwaters receded. The scent of damp earth, rising, the gentle wind moving through the mountains, the first rays of sunlight piercing clouds. Imagine Noah stepping from the ark, trembling, yet hopeful, looking upon a world washed clean. His heart knows both the grief of loss and the wonder of promise. That is where this story leaves us, between sorrow and hope, judgment and mercy, shadow and light. It is the place where humanity always stands, waiting, choosing, hoping. And so the tale of the angels who desired daughters of men ends not in their passion, nor in their fall, but in the whisper of God's enduring faithfulness. For though creation falters, the Creator remains. Though rebellion rises, redemption waits. And though waters destroy, they also cleanse. Let the story fade like the last echo of thunder, leaving only the rainbow's quiet glow. And in that glow, remember the mysteries are not told to frighten, but to awaken, to stir the soul toward reverence, humility, and trust in the one who holds all things. Amen.